I want to talk about something that is happening and that has taken off since 2006. The year matters a bit because it's the beginning of the financial crisis and all of that. But basically, since then, we have had a massive acquisition of land, mostly by states from other states, and also financial firms, etc., buying land, not because they're about to become farmers, by the way. And I want to take this beyond the usual explanation. You understand that buying land is not new. King Leopold just said, "Oh, I'll just buy the Congo," right? I mean, but I think it's too easy to think that this is just old imperial practice as we know it. In the context of what I'm describing, the categories that I use, I want to explore the possibility that this is a significant shift. One way of putting it is that what these acquisitions represent is the making of structural holes in what is ultimately an established jurisdiction of the last few centuries in many countries, of the last century in some, of the last 60 years in others, which is national state territorial authority, or the jurisdiction of the national state. Now, the most common explanation of this kind of stuff, if you have a critical analysis, is to say the commodifying of land. True, that explains a lot. But I want to get at something else, so that is not enough for me. I don't deny it, that's not the debate for me. The debate is there something else happening? And the thesis is we are making, these actors are collectively making, it's not because one of them alone couldn't, but collectively they are making these structural Löcher in national territorial jurisdictions. Now, not just in poor sub-Saharan Africa, also in Russia and in Ukraine. This is something that is really happening in multiple countries. Now, the other element, so the second point here is, since this is also about international relations, I see in that also the making of the structural Löcher are an alternative jurisdiction, because land that was part of national territorial authority or subject to it becomes private property of the Chinese government, of the Swedish government, of the South Korean government. These are all actively buying land all over the place. It changes regime. So at one point, what is on there, the Chinese are buying, when you buy 3 million hectares in Zambia, you have bought whole villages. When the whole of Patagonia in Argentina is bought up, village, except the capital, something is happening that is not just buying a plot of land. It goes beyond that. When that replicates across the world, then something is happening. So what I'm trying to do here, for those of you who may not still have understood why I'm doing this, is to juxtapose yet another transformation in this assemblage of territorial authority and rights that represents a nation state, not just looking at the global city, but also looking at something else. So anyhow, you get the picture. There is another issue that I don't mention here, which is that we are actively making surplus populations. Whole villages, they just move. If you take 3 million hectares and you make that in Zambia and in Congo in each, which is what China did, and you make that into a plantation for palm trees to produce biofuels, you have evicted massively whole floras and faunas, but also whole villages, whole people. Where are those people going to? They're going to cities. There's a whole other urban history in the making. So when people talk about all these huge mega cities, it's just like this miracle. They become bigger. Well, no, very often it's civil wars are urbanizing refugees and displaced people. And not always, it can go both ways, but that's one of them. And the other one is these massive displacements of people, which are only going to keep on growing. This is taking out land from a complex format, whatever criticisms one might have, which is national state jurisdiction, and moving it to a very elementary format, which is private property of land, in this case by one state, of another state's land. But it is truly, so I like to say in my sort of more whatever moments, that this makes territory, or it makes land mobile institutionally. It moves from complex framing of national jurisdiction to another institutional framing. But it is invisible. That mobility is clearly invisible in some ways, but it is a mobility. So anyhow, these are sort of elements. Now, let me, and so at the final point there, the active making of self-property, and final, these are novel assemblages of territorial authority and rights. That mobility of land from a national state jurisdictional framing to private property framing, that makes it a new assemblage of elements of territorial authority and rights, a more elementary one, I would say. Anyhow, now here, just to give you some sense, right? This is South Korea, etc., buying land in Sudan. This is what I was getting at. Each of these cases that I'm giving, I'm not giving you all 95 cases, all right? It represents a complex novel arrangement. That is why but I won't have time to elaborate, but I already mentioned about South Korea as signatory of the International Criminal Court, and at the same time buying land from the government of Sudan. South Korea means the government, okay? Now the Saudis who are giving 100 million, my juxtaposition there is that we, the citizens of the world, via the Food and Agriculture Organization in Rome, give actually 100 million, you may not know that, but you contribute to that, 100 million to the government of Ethiopia to feed poor people. You know, these different circuits that come together in one place, the government of Ethiopia. Anyhow, I leave it to your imagination to interpret what that all means. Now here are the cases of Congo and China, China in Congo and in Zambia. Mind you, they have much more land acquired also for mining, etc., protected by private security forces. So in that sense, a change in jurisdictional framing. This is just to grow palm oil. So this is a plantation economy. Now, if you think of the Caribbean, you know, the Caribbean used to be this extraordinary fauna and flora. Then we, the Europeans, made it into sugar plantation, coffee plantation, and a few other things, and eliminated all complexity in the flora and fauna. This is what's happening now actively. You have simply evicted, as I said, villages and floras and faunas. Russia and Ukraine, these have become major destinations. South Korea is buying land from the Russians and the Ukraine. So is Sweden and a whole bunch of other countries. And then some of these points here, you don't need to, we are not going to get into that, but they reflect very complex, intermediate things. You have to run it through a public offering, because otherwise, you know, for Russia and Ukraine as post-Soviet republics, it's not so easy to sell land to another government. This is not a simple transaction, you know, so it is not the same as older empires. So I am just entranced by the complex contracts. All of this buying of land, by the way, is one of those circuits that non-urban, but guess what? With that level of complexity in those kinds of contracts, it produces all kinds of jobs in the cities. You know, this is all the non-X that I was talking about at the beginning that feeds into the X. You can tell probably that I'm terribly amused by all of this. Of course, this is very tragic in some ways. Now, also the financial firms are buying land. This starts in 2006, 2007, and as I said, they're not going to become farmers. But you can't go wrong with land today, because it's either food, the prices of food on the world market as commodities have gone up by 170%, or it's water, the new blue oil or whatever, white oil, or it's rare earth. I'm sure that you know some of you, but anyhow, I won't elaborate. Now, there you see also Gulf investors, you know, they acquire a Russian firm in order to then gain control over that land. It's not about the firm. It's about really a much deeper resource. So this is an indication of these complex contracts that need to be developed. And this is the latest, which happened just before the epic flooding, which is the Pakistan offering 500,000 hectares to Gulf investors with the promise of a security force of 100,000 to protect the land. Now, let me ask you, who do you think are the security forces? They are military, paid by Pakistani citizens. From whom are they protecting? Not from the Taliban, from Pakistani farmers who also would like to have that land. So these are very weird geopolitics. And in that sense, you also see a kind of different assemblage of, you know, elements getting shaped deep inside that. Now, no, I'm not going to. So I am going to finish, because now I really have to finish. I'm going to read, see, there's a lot of text here. So I hope that I left you with some images of novel developments and all the, this is the main point, all the non-urban processes that feed, not just into economic growth, but into a new type of strategic geopolitical role of global cities. Thank you very much.